So here we go. So welcome to Agile Hartford, our first meeting of 2022. Great to see everyone back. We had a very, very busy December, as many of you know, 3 events, and the board took a little break over the holidays, a well-deserved break, but we're ready to go for 2022. We've got some great speakers coming up, great presentations, starting with tonight. So thank you all for joining us. So here, as always, is our board. We've been in place now for probably a good 3 years. And there's myself down on the bottom left, Steve Nunziata, Larry Bach is above me, Janet Custer's in the middle, and Sue Kraj is on the upper right, Dave Kiersnowski in the lower right. So I did ask everyone if they still wanted to be on the board in 2022, and I am grateful that everyone said yes. So here we are again. So we're happy to be here, happy to continue moving this group forward. How to find us, you always know how to reach us. We have our Gmail account, agilehartford@gmail.com. We're on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Agile Hartford is a group, so you need to request permission and we will grant you permission. And we have a YouTube channel. So any of our presentations from the last, I don't know, Dave, what is it, 6, 9 months, maybe all of last year, we've recorded them and they're out there on YouTube if you ever want to reference them. And as always, our website is agilehartford.org, where you can always find the presentations if we have them, but also links to the YouTube presentations themselves. So plenty of ways to catch up with us. So we usually send out a survey at the conclusion of the meeting. So tonight's no different. We're just interested in your feedback about the event itself, how we did, how we can improve. We're good Agilists. We're always looking to retrospect and see how we can better serve the Agile community. So I want to take a moment to thank Elias Group for their sponsorship of not only this event, but all our events last year. So Diane Hiller from Elias Group is here. So Diane, I can give you the floor.
Yeah, no, we obviously, appreciate all of the work that you guys do to put on these events. Always bring in such good information to our Agile community. And it sounds like, tonight's speaker as well, I'm really looking forward to hearing it myself. I feel like some of the topics, even though I'm not a true Agilist practicing out in the field, but I feel like there's so much information that we gain from these just to better ourselves as people in the community. So, but Elias, and we do have a lot of opportunities going on right now too. So from a lot of different levels of Agile coaching engagements that we're involved in, to Scrum Masters, trying to really help our clients make that transformation a reality. So if there's anybody, that there's anything we can do to help support that for anybody, if you're looking for a career change or anything like that, you can always reach out to us. So, that's, I guess, again, thank you for scheduling this event. Thank you for having us as a sponsor as well. And looking forward to the meeting.
Thanks, Diane. So join our team. So as I mentioned, we've had a board in place for a few years, and we run the risk of kind of falling into our routine. So we're opening a board position. If anyone in the community is interested in joining the board, learning how, well, basically the sausage is made, I would like to hear from you and see what interests you have and what you think you can bring to the group. This is a volunteer group, so it's really all about you and what you'd like to do and how you'd like to engage. If you have a passion for this kind of stuff, just reach out to anyone on the board, send us an email, raise your hand. So think about it, and we'll bring you on board. We'll teach you all, you'll learn the ropes, how things run, and maybe you can find your niche in there. And so consider it. If you'd like to join the board for 2022, we'd be happy to talk to you. Okay, so here's what Q1 looks like. So as of, well, right now, this minute, our February event is open. Our very own, from Agile Hartford, Eric Jaeger, will be talking about Kanban, more than just the board, a robust management methodology. So Eric is a great Kanban instructor, certified Kanban instructor. So I encourage you, if you're interested in Kanban and how it could be leveraged, join us in February. Registration is open right now through Eventbrite. You'll also get the link at the close of this meeting for registration along with the survey. So look forward to that as well. We have a couple of events in March. Mike Burrows is joining us on March 3rd. Mike comes to us all the way from London, UK. Is that right, Larry? Give me the thumbs up. Thumbs up. Okay, yes. That's why it's Lunch and Learn, because he is a good 5 hours ahead of us. So, but we're also doing on March 23rd, Cheryl Krupe will be here for Transformation at Scale, talking about her journey with MetLife. And then on April 6th, Sally Alata will join us from a talk she gave at Agile Austin, if I understand correctly, on how being bold and leading with love helped me make global impact. So should be another interesting session. I'll say also for May, we are in discussions to have an in-person event to celebrate our 6-year anniversary at City Steam in Hartford. So still working out those details, but it's all coming, it's all good. Q1, Q2 is looking pretty solid right now. So sign up for February and we'll solidify the events going forward as well. So this evening's presenter, so all the way from Colorado, please help me welcome Jen Krieger on Your Career Future Looks Different. Are you ready? Jen, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, let me share my screen. I feel like this is the same language that everybody uses while they get ready for presentations, like, can you hear me? Can you see my screen? All those lovely things.
And yes, we can on both.
Yeah, I figured somebody would shout at me if you didn't. A little bit about me before I get started. I am I'm interested in interaction while I'm speaking. So if you do want to jump in and ask me a question, I highly encourage you to do it. I'll also kind of keep my eyeballs on the chat. So if you are more somebody who would rather chat your reflection or feedback or question that you have, I'm also happy to keep an eyeball on that as well. This is largely about me and my own career journey and what I've learned over the years about both investing in myself as well as others. So I want to encourage you all to understand that while this might be right for me, it may not be right for you. However, I will tell you a lot of this stuff has resonated with folks, and I feel I did this session once, and this is now going to be the 4th time I've done it because people are getting a lot out of it. So I'm hoping that it resonates with all of you. And if it doesn't, tell me what I should change, because I also like to evolve my own way of speaking as well. So adapting to change is often hard for us. I know many of us, especially after the events of the past couple of years, have been faced with this concept of massive change. And it's not going anywhere. We all know this based on what we do for a living, that change is constant. And it's really hard for us to keep up, stay motivated. There's so much changing at once, you really don't even know what to focus on. Like a couple of years ago, everybody was talking to me about blockchain, and I was saying, okay, folks, blockchain, maybe not important. Everybody's talking about it again. And so I feel like, is it something I should invest in? Should I even know what it is? Does anybody even really know what I'm talking about right now on this call? These are things that in the tech industry, all we know that is certain is that our pace of change is going to continue to accelerate, unfortunately. And so the question I have for everybody here is, are you ready for that change? Are you going to be, I don't know, like surprised by the things that are happening in the industry, that are happening in your career? And I'm going to be super frank. I was surprised at many points in my career. And this is why I feel it's really important to get this message across. How did I get to where I am today? Just a few short years ago, I was a junior project manager in a very small financial firm. I did not know anything I know today. I did not really understand the technology that I was working on. And I certainly was not working at a company that did technology as their core business. They were selling stocks and bonds as their core business, right? And so I wasn't learning anything about building software. I was just going through those motions. So to reflect back to where I was 20 years ago to where I am today, quite frankly, working at my dream company, which is GitHub, coming from a company previously that was Red Hat, where I was their chief agilist. I don't know, I've made a lot of progress, and it's been in a very short period of time. And I'm hoping that progression that I went through will be communicated clearly to you all on how intentional I was about it. And quite frankly, this is the job I'm actually looking forward to going to every day. It isn't easy to do this job. It is certainly probably the hardest job I've ever done in my life, but I welcome the challenge. And I don't think I would have had this opportunity had I not been doing the things that I was doing during my career, or learning and trial, adoption, error, feedback loops, all those things. And quite frankly, made a lot of mistakes and received a lot of feedback from folks that I looked up to, and also a lot of feedback from people that I just really frankly disliked with intensity. And so the simple start of this is, what makes career advice good? I'm certain everybody on this phone call has been in a situation where you've seen some sort of career advice that looks like one of these three things. Dress for the job you want. Remember that a job doesn't give your life meaning, or work harder than those around you. What other generic pieces of advice have you heard? Go ahead, put some of those in chat. And honestly, does anybody really know what this means and how it applies to you? Like, what's the context for you? Anybody can go out to the internet, like I did when I was starting to think about this content, and do an internet search and pull thousands of career advice quotes. And the reality of advice like this is that it's highly contextual and definitely problematic. So let's take the first one. What job do you want? So as a 20-year-old, did I think I was going to be able to wear a Hello Kitty shirt with a jacket with like zippers and toggles and all sorts of crazy things, versus hedge fund wear, which was nylons, skirts, business professional attire? Did I think that I was prepping myself for a job in which I'd be able to wear sweatpants to work? No, I thought I was prepping myself for a job in which I was going to be an executive and would have to wear, that shirt, tie, and professional attire for the rest of my life. And so maybe dress for the job you want is maybe, maybe I wouldn't have been successful if I showed up to work at a hedge fund in sweatpants, right? Remember that a job doesn't give you meaning. Well, I'm going to be super frank here. Yes, they do. And yes, they can. And yes, you should pursue that job that gives your life meaning. And so here's the thing. I have a friend who worked for the Peace Corps for many years. Did that job give her meaning? Yeah, she was working with people in Africa, helping them actually sustain a certain quality of living. Yeah, it did give her life meaning. And so every single job she's had after that puts her in a position where maybe it's not as fulfilling as the first job she had right out of college. Jobs do define who you are. They shape you, they teach you how to level up, and they do give you meaning. And finally, that last one, work harder than those around you. How many of you think that's problematic given where the state of agility and the way that we're meant to work together is? What would a developer feel like if they were working harder than everybody around you? And how would that show up as in a team environment? It seems to be problematic to me. The language is problematic. So looking at this one, like, where does that leave us? And quite frankly, most of this career advice is being searched for by people who are either trying to do a career transition, maybe new in a career, maybe don't really have a great mentor, or are just looking for maybe an easy button. How does somebody interpret this without an opinion or without a stellar understanding of what they want from their career? The reality is, like, I didn't when I was younger. I took this stuff to heart. I really honestly, and quite frankly, early in my career was more on the left than I am on the right. I thought working harder than people around me was going to get me promoted. Now I know that's not necessarily the stance I need to take, but that's where I was in the early part of my career. So in the past 20 years, I've watched teams rip out, pave over, generally remake technology countless times. There's always going to be something new, something better, something rethought. And if we feel that this is something that only happens to us, it's happening every day to every engineer you work with. I have had countless conversations with people about, should I learn Docker? Is Kubernetes important to me? Should I care about Web3? Like, I don't know, should you? What are you interested in? And so I've watched this happen to many people's careers. And if we think about careers together, a great example of this is the testing industry. So how many of you started your career where people were doing manual click testing? Like they were literally using their mouse to test systems. Yeah, me too. Every single one of my friends who were able to pivot into coding their tests versus clicking through their tests have managed to accelerate their careers, right? You still are. People still are manually click testing, right? For folks who are not, some of them are struggling. Like at least the friends that I know, they struggle to find careers. I have a very good friend who didn't learn how to test, and he struggles to find a job in the area in which he lives, which doesn't have a whole lot of these careers available. And so for the folks who pivoted, they have a lot of options. For the folks who don't, some of those options are drying up. We saw that happen to project management, while project management went into Scrum Masters and now back into maybe technical project management. We saw it happen with business analysis, where a lot of the people that I saw and worked with early in my career are now more in the data warehousing side. They're more looking at massive quantities of data. They're more interested in BI, and maybe not necessarily always writing down business requirements. Some of those people have moved into product management or product ownership. A lot of change has happened. And what I've learned really is that some industries are, like all industries are changing. Some are changing faster than others. And the folks who are actually keeping an eye on those changes and adapting as they come probably have higher salaries, probably have more career opportunity. It doesn't necessarily completely count everyone out, but there's definitely limited options if you don't pay attention. And quite frankly, that is where I was about 10 years ago. And so I'm not speaking about this from a place of egotism. I'm actually speaking about it from experience. And I'm going to tell you that story in a bit. There's no playbook for this, folks. I'm not going to give you a hot list of technologies you should invest in, or say shocking things like all tech jobs will be eventually replaced by robots, although I know some of them will be, and I'm watching it happen right now. The reason I can't tell you these things is because I don't know what they are, and I'm also going to be wrong. And so I think I am on record now as being the person who laughed at a friend when they told me the phrase, "We're all moving to the cloud." And I specifically said to her back then, that is not a thing, and you should stop using that language now. And so here we are, we're all in the cloud, somebody else's cloud. But here's the thing, I'm going to be wrong. When I was younger, I was told by a mentor that business analysis in those days, for me, it was the act of writing those 60-page requirements documents that we all signed off in blood. It was the future, and that I should invest in that space. Would be an amazing career for somebody like me. I have great observation skills. But today, in the companies that I have worked for, business analysis has morphed into something that looks more like product management. We do not write 60-page requirements documents. We're writing user stories. We do not sign off on things in blood. We actually change if we need to, and we pivot. But some of those folks are now doing custom reporting. They're doing data analysis of large, complex data sets. They're deep in the details of data systems and trying to make sense of the data that we have and translate it so that folks can make better business decisions. So the career's changed a little bit. And I might have been okay with that, but it's not where I'm passionate. And so, you know, if I had chose that path, maybe it wouldn't have worked out for me. The problem with this is that the pace of industry is that if we take any time and we become unfocused, everything is going to change around us and we can easily become lost. So I've been lost many times in my career. I've mentioned this before, some good stories with positive outcome, and quite frankly, some not so good. So I've defined my career in 3 stages, and I have some stories to tell you. I have matched these stories with advice that I wish I had listened to before I had made these mistakes, or maybe even some advice I wish somebody had even shared with me that I'd never heard until much later. I'm hoping that this will help you understand how to apply this advice to your own context. So here's my first truth. I didn't learn early on that the world didn't revolve around me. How many of you are in the same boat? My father raised me to speak my mind, and that is definitely how I showed up at work, with a lot of candor. You might imagine that at a financial hedge fund that it was extremely risk adverse and very proper, showing up with candor wasn't good for my career. In fact, it got me in a lot of trouble. I heard my fair share of warnings for how I spoke to people, and I took that feedback very poorly. wasn't emotionally mature enough to hear it. I wasn't capable of digesting it and understanding that what I was doing was wrong, not the other way around. The industry I was in was not ready for my level of transparency and openness, and emotionally speaking, like I was definitely not ready to handle the backlash of my actions. I wish I had been the person who saw the value in working on myself when I was younger. It's like my dad raised me to speak my mind. He also raised me to be independent and not rely on others. Because of this strong outer shell, and the fact that I was extremely painfully shy when I was younger, the emotional ramification was that I felt left out a lot. I didn't feel included. I didn't feel part of the team. And so when I reflect back on that feedback, it just sounded like harsh criticism. And it sounded like I was not part of the team. I have truly the middle child syndrome here. This was me responding in anger to these types of things. So I attended to excel by doing a lot of extra work. I used my technical skills to automate what I was doing, and I was able to do even more than people around me. Remember, I was independent. I didn't need people to tell me how to do my job, nor did I need to make friends at work. So this needless alienation between myself and the people who I worked with, it didn't need to happen. I didn't learn how to be part of a team. I didn't learn how to help others grow and learn as well. And I wish I had spent more time being curious about others, because I probably would have learned something. Like, right? I would have heard something that would have kept me in a position that maybe I could use that knowledge later. I do know that what I learned was not supporting others, not working together as a team. It's like #1 big bad mistake for me in my career. I also wish I learned how to ask better questions when I was younger. And I wish I had learned from others rather than scorn them. And finally, because of this, I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I still don't, but put a yes in chat if you do, and a no if you don't know who you want to be when you grow up. I started my career as this desire to be a veterinarian. Then I moved into getting a degree in psychology and decided I didn't like people. So I pivoted again into finances because numbers are easy. And here I am today coaching like 3,000 employees on how to be better humans. So go figure, right? Anyone, 1 year during our annual review cycle, I asked my boss what I needed to do to qualify for a promotion. Been there, done that? Yeah, me too. What goals should I have? I thought this person was going to tell me in my best interest what would work out for me. So he told me I needed higher education. I was in finance. All I have is a psychology degree. You're not going to get promoted. So he said, get an MBA and that will promote you. So guess what I did? Got an MBA. Took 36 months, 9 classes. Some of the most stressful part of my young life was spent getting that degree. And how many of you believe that I actually got promoted after I got that degree? I didn't. I didn't get promoted. And so I realized the very hard way that I should have asked myself back then if an MBA was the right thing for me to do at the time. What I was interested in was that promotion. What I thought to get that promotion wasn't actually true. And I think we could all probably make a pretty good guess as to what would have gotten me that promotion, which is all the things I was doing wrong were probably the things I should have been focused on, and not necessarily going out and getting an MBA, which frankly, I have not used. So I'm glad I have the degree now. It certainly has been nice to have those 3 letters, but like I said, I've not used any of the information I learned during that. And it was a $35,000 lesson that I don't think anybody should have to learn. So how do I write my own career goals? My friend Kelly Sue ages ago started this game. It was during when I was barely out of college, where every year we with intent will write down the X number of things we want to achieve for the year. And it could be very large goals like buy a new house, or it could be small goals like, hey, drink 8 ounces of water at least once a day, right? Like it could be anything. I have consistently kept this up. And every year the number goes up based on the number of years you're in. So right now I write 120, today, this is what, 2022? I have 122 things I want to achieve for myself this year. Some of them are personal, some of those are professional. It just kind of, and some of them are big, hairy goals that it's going to be really hard for me to get to. Most of them are small things that I can easily check off. Like I want a meal plan every week so that I eat healthy. that's a pretty easy thing for me to do as long as I'm intentional about it. So I haven't always done this. Some years I have skipped it, and I will tell you the years that I have made mistakes are the years in which I did not do this, that I did not think about where I wanted to be, that I did not plan about it, and I did not review whether or not something that somebody was telling me to do fit into the things that I personally wanted to achieve. My lack of planning resulted in even more career frustration, and enough frustration at that point where at 13 years working for this company, I lifted my hand out of the sand and said, where am I going next? And how do I get my next opportunity? Because I can't spend my entire career at this company. So if anybody's ever spent 13 years at a company and not really been curious about what's going on in your industry around you, you might be shocked when you open your eyes and look around. So 12 years at that point of delivering software, from finance into the IT division into actual product development, and all that kind of good stuff. I was really good at my job at that company. But what I didn't have the ability to do was to explain to other people what I was good at in the context of modern language, in the context of a framework that everybody could understand. So we were delivering agilely, but I had no idea what a stand-up was, nor that that daily morning meeting in which we checked in at each other even had a name. And so how could I articulate to a company like SAP or Intel or Red Hat what I was doing and what I was capable of doing? I couldn't. And so I didn't find a job immediately. And it was very hard for me to feel this way. I was in my early 30s at that point, and I felt like I could do nothing. And I felt like I was stuck where I was. Even worse, because I took the stance of, maybe I wasn't as open or interested in feedback, I didn't really have a huge network of peers. I didn't really know what communities to get involved with. I honestly didn't even know who I could reach out to practice my interviewing skills. I really had no options. Because I didn't have the professional network, I also struggled to find a new job. That was well before LinkedIn. That was well before Meetup. That was well before all of the stuff that we have access to. So it was a different time, and it was harder to find things, right? So I stayed at that job for another 2 years before I finally took any job that I could find, just to get away from that extremely toxic environment I found myself in. I was still not promoted, an unused MBA. I finally had paid off my school loans at that point. But at this new job, I met somebody who invited me to participate in their professional network. It came at the right exact moment in my life. My husband and I had recently moved to North Carolina. We had no friends. We had no idea how to make friends at 35. Like, how do you make friends at 35? Who knows? I don't know. I don't know how to make friends at 46. And so these folks that I met via this network, I still actually talk to today. They're still professional friends today, and they've been a lifeline for me for years. So when I got to mid-career, I was also dealing with my first ever remote job. I was one of 5 people in the entire company that was remote. And just to be super clear, before Zoom, before Slack, all I had was a Cisco desk phone and email. Eventually I got a BlackBerry. That was really amazing. I felt so important. And this is even worse. I couldn't actually dial into any of the conference rooms directly. They had to call me. And so you can imagine what happened every single time. They forgot to call me until about maybe 15, 20 minutes into the call. I literally made them print out my picture and attach it to the desk in the conference room so they would remember to call me. So anyway, I was desperate to learn for any way to figure out how to do this better, because morale was in the pits. Like, I can't tell you how hard it was for somebody who felt, just telling my story, middle child syndrome, non-included, didn't call me 15 minutes into the meeting. That's really hard for me, right? Like, emotionally speaking, I was kind of devastated. So I started reaching out to my professional network for help, and I met Mark Kilby. If anybody knows Mark Kilby, you will know him to be like the leading expert on remote work and agility in the space. And I learned a lot from him, from different techniques that I could use, different tools that we could try. His creativity is pretty amazing, and it continues to inspire me with how capable he is to actually have the conversation with others. But I will tell you, I was also still young when I first joined this professional network. I didn't know much about what they were talking about. I didn't understand the terms. And honestly, I was still a little bit closed off to a lot of what I was hearing. About a year in, something clicked though. I was having lunch with my boss at the time, and one of my colleagues I had met from that network, you may know Bob Galen. He was one of my first friends in the Raleigh Agile community. And I don't actually know if he ever thought, or he knew that I thought him as a mentor, but that was definitely what I thought of him. He said some very critical things to me during that lunch that are still with me today. And the most important thing for me was that he said that true leaders are one that both observe long enough to see the truth and are also courageous enough to tell it. It resonated so much with me because that is exactly my stance. And I hadn't bumped into anybody at that point that articulated that in a way that I could hear it. Was this at me at the time? Maybe a little bit of a spark there, but certainly not on the emotional maturity side just yet. But the way that he said it appealed to me enough that I knew that I wanted to be like that. So in hearing Bob talk about courage and leadership, it made me realize that I actually wanted to be a leader. I wanted to learn how to do the things he was talking about. I took my first class on leadership skills and facilitation, where I learned, basically drilled into me, the skills of active listening and learning how to ask open questions. So for the next 3-4 years of my career, I spent many hours learning, going to classes, reading books, attending meetups, listening to everybody and anyone, asking hard questions, never binary yes, no questions, always, those open questions where I could get people to talk to me. And I put aside my previous perspective that I was a know-it-all and I didn't need anyone. And I said to myself, I don't know anything, and I need to listen to everybody else around me. I read so many books, I honestly don't know how I did it. Quite frankly, I probably read close to like 500 books during that period of time. I learned aggressively from the engineers I was working with, from infra projects to software projects, migrations, upgrades, literally anything you can think of. I worked on a project like that. And then it came that word. Nothing to that point had really inspired me to attach myself emotionally to it. Agile, Scrum, Kanban, yeah, okay, great. I was never really emotionally attached to any of it. But when I first heard the word that I'm going to tell you about next, everything changed for me. It was so alluring. I wanted it so bad for everybody that I worked with. And I was willing to do anything to get it for folks because it made 100% sense to me. I had never seen anything up to this point, and I still have not seen anything from this point that made as much sense to me. And that really is DevOps. And honestly, like if I were to go back and talk to my past self, I would say, well, obviously people should work together to get things done. And obviously everything that we're doing in Scrum doesn't work unless you're deploying. And if you can't deploy, then you got to fix those problems, right? Obviously the business has to be involved. Obviously you should be talking to your customers. Obviously customer feedback should get to your infrastructure team. I don't know if I'm 100% all in now because I still look at this stuff as solving the same problem over and over again with different words and different techniques. And we still boil down to the simple problem, which is humans are tough and they're going to still inject their chaos into the system. And so we can only work with what we can work with. But I'll be honest with you, the DevOps side is really where my career accelerated. I was working in Red Hat IT at the time. I was working with a small team of people that was meant to completely change the way that code was deployed in IT. And honestly, it was really some of the best years of my career. I really, really loved that work. Here's the thing, because of my interest in that topic, I was such a nerd about it. My desire to learn rapidly, I asked so many questions. I put my ego aside and reached out to Patrick Dubois, Gene Kim, all these people I tried to talk to. Some of them talked to me, some of them didn't. I asked so many questions and learned so much about the technology in such a short time. It got me noticed at Red Hat. I bathed in that knowledge. I became the person who knew about this stuff that people would come to. And this is a point in my career that I attribute to a wee bit of luck. So I'm Irish. And I believe wholly that I was in the right place at the right time with the right person to talk to. And so I bumped into a woman named Denise Dumas at one of Red Hat's conferences. I was there to speak on what we were doing in Red Hat IT in the space of DevOps. And I went out to dinner with her and a bunch of other women. She was sponsoring like a women in tech dinner. And she happened to sit down next to me, and I wound up geeking out to her probably for about 45 minutes. And now, like, looking forward or looking back, I probably talked too much, and I probably exhausted her with my excitement. But this is the thing that happened. On the way back to the hotel, she surprised me by leaning over and saying this one key phrase, which was, "You should come and do that stuff for me versus doing it for IT." And so who says no to an opportunity like that? Just to be super clear, Denise Dumas was the VP of Red Hat Enterprise Linux at the time. So this is the operating system that drives the entire internet. All of our banking systems are the FAA, Homeland Security, basically all government operations use Linux. Your ATM uses Linux. And so I was like super dazzled. So who says no to something like that? Anyone? Anybody gonna say no? Well, guess who said no? This person right here. I said no for about 6 months because I was so loyal to the team I was working in IT that I didn't feel comfortable enough to say no, to say yes to her. I wanted to follow through on everything. Well, here's the thing. I finally said to myself, what the hell am I doing? I've got to hit myself with a clue bat and say yes to this. And that, I believe, is the moment in which my career completely changed. My career in open source, it really began at that point. The opportunities Denise presented to me and the doors it opened to me are still amazing. Like, she kept challenging me to do more, to try new things, to learn and grow at a pace I didn't know I could sustain. Not all opportunities I was given were ones I wanted. One of my early friends in the Linux team, Matt Miller, he's the Fedora project leader right now, asked me to speak at a conference, and I had never done that before. So I was both delighted he asked and terrified he asked. I had sweaty palms for 8 months leading up to that conference, and I literally threw up right before I went and spoke. That is how nervous I was. So let's be super clear. My boss went, my boss's boss went, my boss's boss's bosses went, and I totally bombed it. It was the worst presentation I have ever given, but it's the best feedback I've ever gotten, which was, your talk was poop. And honestly, I'm really glad I said yes. If I hadn't, I definitely would not be here talking to y'all today. And I definitely would not be able to hold my own in conversations with executives. Here's another misstep I made with Denise. For about 9 months, we argued over whether or not I should become a manager or not. My position was, I don't need those folks. I'm better on my own. Sound familiar? There's a theme here, right? Clearly, I didn't learn much from my earlier you need to do team work in order to actually accelerate. So that is an important lesson to learn. Denise knew better, and she knew I needed to do that in order to grow. And management was definitely one of those things that scared me. I had no idea how to manage people. And I certainly had no idea how to do a job that was actually quite scary for me. I had to learn everything very quickly. And I had associates that weren't exactly happy to have a new manager. The mistakes I made as a new manager were disastrous, right? Quite frankly, like, shameful. However, after a few short months of completely messing up, I regained my footing and started watching other managers. I watched them invest in their teams and invest in others around them. They were taking time to make sure that people reported to them were doing their best work, were happy, were felt seen, were successful. And I used a couple of things they they suggested, and I was amazed at the return I got from doing those things. So here's the thing. I have learned that the most important thing for my career acceleration is to invest in others. There is nothing more impactful. So as I help people grow their careers, I am also learning from them as I'm doing that. And that has been literally the one thing I can point to as being the true, honest truth of career progression for me. I've learned a lot about human interaction in the workplace via these conversations. Mentorship was a bi-directional experience for me, but I want to point out one specific thing. Denise wasn't mentoring me, she was sponsoring me. Sponsorship is way different than mentorship. And I think that when you have somebody who sponsors you, who has a VP title, who is developing you, who is investing in you, that is career acceleration at its best. When you're in a position like I am at GitHub, that's power I need to use to help others grow and benefit from that. And I take it very seriously. So all this effort has really paid off for me. Very early in my career, I participated in a workshop that was meant to teach you good product management skills. How many of you played that game where you get into a big blob of people and you have to put your hand on the person's shoulder in front of you and then somehow get from one side of the room to the other without breaking connection? The simple fact of the matter is the answer to that exercise is communication, to actually open your mouth and tell people where you're going. The whole point of this exercise, obviously, is that without good communication, you can't expect people to follow your direction, right? I have not thought about that for a single moment since I taught that to the Red Hat Linux team. But when I was preparing for this presentation, I was curious to learn what what my friends in the industry had heard that resonated with them for career advice, and what was the most impactful career advice that they had heard. And quite frankly, surprisingly, it was that 10 minutes in a room where I taught people that exercise that resonated with one of my Kubernetes engineers that I was working with at the time. He said to me that what he heard was, in order for him to be a successful engineer, he had to bring others along for the ride. And he needed to hear that from me. And it was at the right time in his career, and such has made him a better engineer. Think about it. Here's really the reflection I've done here. If I hadn't found a network of professional colleagues, if I hadn't been curious to learn techniques, if I hadn't been interested in teaching others what I knew, if I hadn't been open or confident enough to share what I had learned, if I'd done one simple thing differently, I could not have given him the thing he needed to hear at the time he needed to hear it to successfully accelerate his own career. And that really embodies where I am today, constantly learning from folks, pushing myself to read everything I get my hands on, listening to other points of view, expressing questions curiously, not judgmentally. And I'm beyond thankful for all the experience I've learned over the years. I'm beyond thankful that the experience qualifies me to work at GitHub. But I have one final piece of advice to share with you. This came from my sister. And when I asked her, this kind of embodies the way that we were raised by my father. And it's not enough to do your best unless you are prepared to be your best. And what that means for me is that I've got to be deliberate. I have to plan. I have to use my time wisely because I don't have a whole lot of it. And I have to invest in myself. And if you take one thing away from this, you must stop relying on your boss or other people to invest in you. Folks absolutely will show up. They will absolutely sponsor you. They will absolutely mentor you if you ask. But if you don't know what you want, no one's going to do it for you. So my only question for everybody is, why not just start now? And that's all I've got. And I'd love to answer questions, have an open conversation, challenge me on something I've said. What are you curious about?
Wish I'd heard your talk 20 years ago.
I probably was recorded. I can probably find that recording. I think the mistake I made, Larry, was spending 20 minutes of probably a 43-minute presentation talking about myself, which ironically, I've just spent 38 minutes talking about myself. So congratulations, everybody. Full circle here.
Personally, I just thought it was really eye-opening, some of the conclusions that you've come to, which I guess all of us have come to at some point. But the way that you've synthesized it all together, again, I wish I'd heard it 20 years ago, so that I could probably do something with it. Maybe it's not too late. I mean, when you asked earlier if we all knew what we wanted to be when we grew up, and you look in the chat and most people said no, I'm one of those that said no, but I think I can still use it. I really like the part that you said, set goals for yourself. I don't know if I can set 122, but set goals for yourself.
I'm working on it. I only have like 75 written down so far. It's right here. I'm still working through it. It's not easy to do that. And some of it's like, do I really need 123 goals? I don't really know. Or 223 or whatever I said. But the reality is that the intention is what's helpful for me.
Yeah.
I go through the same thing at work. I've got a team of about 35, and we manage all of the technical programs and products at GitHub. And so there's a lot of information that crosses my desk on a daily basis. If I wasn't intentional every day about what I wanted to accomplish, I would get nothing done. And so that looks like me saying no to as many things as I say, or actually I say like yes to about 2 things a day, and I say no to about 30 things a day. And so understanding what I need to say no to versus what I should say yes to is really important to me, to maintain my time and to reduce my ability to burn out. I know that a lot of this, like, just a moment of transparency, not that I've been untransparent. I was really burned out the first year of COVID. I got into an emotional place where I didn't feel like I could do anything right. Every time I tried to do something, I was met with resistance or some sort of negative response. And what I didn't realize back then, and I probably could give myself a little bit of grace now retrospectively, is that the responses I were getting were from a stance of everybody's life was in chaos and no one could handle any of the questions I was asking them. And so it wasn't that I was doing something wrong. It was just that everybody around me was like in a state of emotional ruin. I'm going to just be super honest with you. It's not better. Everybody is struggling and we all have different reasons for it. No justification, no need to say what your reasons are, but it's completely okay to be struggling. I think recognizing that and speaking that truth helps people. I know that, so the start of this year, I arrived to work to 8 of my team members with COVID, and saying to them that they didn't do anything wrong. They're not bad people. I'm not going to think poorly of them. Like, honestly, some of them just needed to hear that. Like, sometimes we just have to recognize that life happens, shit happens, and it's okay. You just have to bask in the emotion for a little while and move on. I see a question in chat, in future, what will Scrum Master job change to? So I'm just going to preface this with, I am an extremely opinionated person, and I may say something that's going to irritate something on this call. I recognize that. If you are a Scrum Master, I apologize in advance. Here's the thing. Silicon Valley seems to set the tone for us. So if you are paying attention to what Silicon Valley is saying, likely that you'll see that impact your career sometime in the future. The way that I have watched my own career grow, shrink, adapt, change, is that the job function that you are doing as a Scrum Master is always going to be needed. What you call that role is going to change. The faster you see that and the faster you adapt to that change, the better off you will be. It's not that I'm not saying Scrum Masters won't be needed in 5 years. What I am saying is people are starting to see that there are different skill sets that are needed from people, and we are calling them different things. At GitHub, and I'm super honest, at GitHub, they don't like the word agile. I have agile coaches reporting to me. I do not call them agile coaches. I call them continuous improvement managers, because that is the language that GitHub can hear. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with adapting. I'm okay with making it what the company needs in order to be successful. The intent is still the same, helping people grow, learn, do something different so they don't feel so constrained. GitHub seems to enjoy more lean terminology than they do like Scrum terminology or SAFe terminology. Every company is going to be different, and you need to adapt your stance based on what that company is saying. For me, I will never hire another Scrum Master for the rest of my life, for the rest of my career. And the reason is because every single engineering manager and engineer I have talked to in the past 7 years is equally capable of reading all of the things I have read, and in some cases are experts on the knowledge more than I am. And what I have discovered is they're pretty capable of doing that role. And there's arguments about whether an engineering manager should be a Scrum Master. I'm happy to have it. The reality is I see it working at companies like Red Hat and GitHub. I see it working at Google, see it working at Amazon, see it working at Netflix. So at some point, we have to maybe give up a little bit of that control and say, okay, then what is the next thing that my unique skill set can do for a company of high tech? It's not that no company is ever going to need a Scrum Master again. That's definitely not what I'm saying. There are absolutely companies out there hiring all the time. One of the things I did not mention during my presentation, which I think is a really important tip, set yourself up a LinkedIn job search. Even if you're not looking, set it up and get those notifications, because it's going to tell you who's hiring, what they're calling those roles, what qualifications they're looking for, and it will help you set your own personal goals. Something I started doing back when I was doing that first job search, and I never turned them off. I still get emails from monster.com. It's ridiculous. Like I'm not using monster.com, but I still get emails from monster.com at my, guess what, Hotmail account. So go fig, right? So yeah, I hope that helps. I think it's just what I see the industry changing to is one of technical project management is now the term I see a lot. I see technical program management. And what I see differently about these jobs is that the people who can stand toe to toe with engineers and have that network configuration conversation, you don't need to know everything about it. You certainly don't need to code it, but if you can understand what they're saying, you're likely to do better. It's not that you can't do well if you're not technical. It's just that you will do better. So that's just, sure, Dawn, what would you like to ask?
I lead a team that's in the middle of a transformation and is used to being highly directed in a very hierarchical organization. And, you know, a lot of them, we're the only company that they've ever worked for. And traditionally, the organization hasn't changed much. Now, the pace of change, as you've articulated very clearly in your presentation, is kind of caught up with them. So are there some basic steps I can help them with to take them through, you know, how to get ready and deal with change and take more charge of their career? There tend to be a group that wants to know, what should I learn? Some of the advice that you've given already, I think I'm going to take back to them. But I want them to set themselves up and be in a position. We're going to have a lot of opportunities in our company, and I still feel like they're waiting to be taken care of.
Yeah. It's you know, like I'm gonna internet search for an article that you might enjoy in this particular case. There's a gentleman called Sam Nuth who writes for opensource.com about this space, and some of the things that he's written are quite insightful about what he expects from his own staff. From a person who is at the VP level, who has a large team inside of a high-tech environment, the thing that I tell my team is, when you are at the beginning of your career, I'm going to do a lot more hand-holding for you. I've got, for all of my junior people, I have rotations. They work with staff level people who know what they are doing, and they get exposed to a lot of different technologies. So they go like infrastructure projects to data projects to, you know, product facing, customer facing product projects. They get all sorts of exposure. For my mid-career people, I expect them to know what they want. And the way that I handle this is, I'm maybe a little nefarious about this, but the way I have this conversation is we do monthly P&D for everybody that reports to me. And we have what we call career ladders, which describe each band and what you're expected to do at each band. And I put it in front of them and I say to them, evaluate yourself against that band and let me know what you think. And then once you declare, we're going to talk about each one of those things. And I'm going to tell you what you need to do to demonstrate that you're better at that. But the first and most important step to that, Dawn, is you are telling them that they must first take that first step by self-evaluating.
Yeah,
I think that's probably a healthy thing for that team, but you have to have something they compare themselves to first.
Thank you. That's a big help.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find that article too. What else are you interested in knowing?
So we get time for one or two more questions if anyone has something they'd like to say.
I want to know how Jen read 500 books in a couple of years.
Right.
That's an awesome question.
I don't have kids. I mean, like, I have hobbies, but I was really able to kind of make my hobby reading. I also am you know, like, honestly, like, I commit myself to 42 or 52 books a year. So I will read a book once a week. Some of the books are like crazy big. Some of the books are really slim. What really helped me during that period of time to read that many books is honestly, like, I really felt like I really felt hopeless. I really honestly believed that I had no skills. I really honestly thought I wasn't going to be able to get anywhere in my career. And I didn't know how else to, and quite frankly, was not, back then I was younger. I didn't have the money to invest in a class. I was paying off that $35,000 worth of education that I didn't get any value from. So think about like $35,000 to a 25-year-old, like that was a lot of money back then. And I was like, I didn't get anything out of it, and I paid all this money. So like maybe if I read a book, I'll get better value out of it. And so that's really what it turned out to be. And I read everything from like, all the Scrum manuals to like business books on building strategy to like all sorts of different things. Like, believe me, a lot of it was being in the car, commuting back and forth to work every day. I listened to a lot of audiobooks. When I was running, I used to be a marathon runner, so I'd routinely run like 14 to 20 miles twice a week. And then my normal run was like 8 miles. So that's a huge time investment. So I listened a lot. So I don't think I was there with a book sitting on my butt all the time. I was like actively doing things and listening. But that was like my meditation back then.
What are you reading right now? What are you interested in right now?
I am reading High Impact Tools for Teams right now because I was just curious about it, and it had a lot of pictures in it. So I feel like I'll get through really quickly. I'm not as quick as I used to be. I definitely am slower. I'm reading the Witcher series. So if anybody is interested in the Witcher, I decided to read like all 13 books that were translated recently into English. Good Lord. I have, like every other person on the face of the planet, have like the big queue of books next to your bedside that you never got to. I've got that too.
Okay. Anything else before we wrap up?
So how do you become technical at a high level for a new position? Like you're going into a new job, and you need to learn the technical side. Actually, it'll be like a release manager position.
And you need to. Here's the best book that you can buy. Where is it? Oh no, here. Continuous Delivery by Jez Humble and David Farley. Highly recommend buying it and using it like it's a Bible. In the back, you don't need to know everything about this. This is like the Bible for DevOps, really, in my honest opinion. But in the back, there's this lovely grid that you can easily find online that tells you about release maturity and what systems should look like. Honestly, I don't know. And quite frankly, the book is old now, so you're not going to get a whole lot of like some of the technology in here is outdated, but it will tell you a lot about the way that you should be thinking, a lot about the types of technologies your team should be thinking about. And so at the very minimum, it will give you the words you need to use in order to hold your own in conversation. Only other and that's the most important part. Like, so if somebody says, we need to do CI/CD, then you'll know to ask the question, do you mean delivery or deployment? Because they're two entirely different things, and it's a really important question. So there's a lot of context that you can learn from that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. You gotta talk. You gotta be able to talk. Explain what you are. You have to know how to.
So
otherwise, they'll just take advantage of you.
We are about at the end of our time box. So, Jen, we want to thank you for this presentation and being with us tonight. Very, very informative. I know a lot of us have been there. Culture is always the biggest part of any transformation, I think we all know. So a lot of good advice there. So thank you very much. And
thank you.
You'll get a survey from us and also a link to
Thank you.
We hope to see you again soon.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for being here.